Now on Mississippi Insight is Mississippi's 3rd District Congressman Michael Guest on the lingering federal shutdown. Republican strategist Austin Barber on the battle for messaging in this standoff. And military veteran and former journalist Bill Carter on Israel's prime minister and the chances for peace in Gaza. That's all ahead this week on Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us for this October 19th edition of Insight. Congress is facing another deadlock and the stakes couldn't be higher. Mississippi's own 3rd District Representative Republican Michael Guest says the ongoing budget fight is about more than politics. It's about priorities. Our Washington correspondent Rashad Hudson talked with Guest about the impact of the possible federal shutdown and what it means for families and federal workers across Mississippi.
I know you're taking a different approach than your Democratic colleagues. What's your message to your colleagues as we enter this 14th day of the shutdown?
As we continue to move forward now in week 3, have really been focusing my message on the constituents at home. When I'm out and about throughout my time in the district, I remind everyone that, look, Republicans have in the House that we have passed the continuing resolution, clean spending bill for additional 7 weeks to allow us additional time to finish the appropriations process. This is now in the Senate. It takes 60 votes in the Senate. Republicans clearly do not have 60 votes in the Senate, so it's going to have to require Democratic buy-in. And at this point, as the Speaker has said, I tell people that Republicans in the House have done our job. It's now for the Senate to either pass what Republicans have sent, or they can amend that and send it back to the House for our consideration. But instead of Republicans in the House continuing to pass competing pieces of legislation, it is now up to the Senate to decide what they can get 60 votes for them to pass that legislation. And if it differs from what the House sent, then to send it back to us for our consideration.
What have you heard from your constituents as it relates to this government shutdown? What kind of concerns are you hearing?
It has not impacted people to a great extent to this point. Mail still continues to run, Social Security checks, the VA hospital is still open. VA benefits are continuing to be paid. So as a whole in Mississippi, I think the impact has been extremely minimal. Now, as individuals begin not to get paid, we know that there is a chance that the military will not be paid on the 15th of this month. We saw last Friday, that some of our federal law enforcement officers, they only receive 70% of their pay. If individuals who are employees of the federal government, if their paychecks are either reduced substantially or if those paychecks cease to exist at all, that's going to, I believe, put a pressure point on both parties to try to come together. We see that the president has tried to minimize the impact. He has continued to fund WIC. He has continued to try to find ways to fund the military, and is believed that he's going to be able to use R&D money to fund the military so they won't miss a pay period. And the president and administration is looking at ways to pay our federal employees. And so if we can continue to pay those crucial employees throughout the course of the shutdown, again, I believe here at home in Mississippi that the impact to most individuals will be fairly minimal.
We got a chance on our podcast In the Know last week to talk about the standoff with Austin Barber. The veteran Republican strategist is a partner at the Clearwater Group. Are Republicans winning the battle over this so far, or Democrats have an edge with healthcare funding angles here?
I don't think Democrats have an advantage. I mean, it's hard. You and I are just folks out working and trying to get through the day. You're not paying close attention to what's going on in Washington. From my understanding, when folks are really going to get upset is as we get closer to the end of the year, when it starts to interfere with your health care, with the insurance policies that you have. A lot of people will go to the Federal Insurance Exchange, and they're buying their insurance from that exchange, and there's subsidies that come through. If I buy a $1,000 policy and I get a 90% subsidy from the federal government, well, if the government is shut down and there's no deal in place, do I get to keep my insurance? Do I lose my insurance? I think that's the boiling point, Byron, for when a deal gets done. Maybe it gets done before then. I hope so. We're 2 weeks into this. And you know, from folks who pay much closer attention to this kind of stuff in Washington, they tell me, look, I don't see anything happening before November. But this is not a good thing. Republicans have laid out a plan to try to fund the government from right now through just before Thanksgiving. And from my understanding, the Democrats wanted to add $1 trillion of new spending on top of that. Well, that's not what anybody really wants to do. It's not fair for the American taxpayers. So I hope we're going to find a solution and a resolution to this. But it's Washington, and you know, it's hard to guess what actually will happen up there or predict.
Is there an appetite on the Republican side to get some kind of a compromise on health care?
Yeah, of course there is. And I think Republicans are having that conversation behind the scenes with Democrats, but they're like, listen, we got to open up the federal government right now. And you're not going to threaten us by saying, well, the only way we'll do that is if we agree with your, you know, reopening the government and funding it through November the 21st at these levels, plus $1 trillion for 30 or 35 days. So I don't blame the Republicans for not agreeing to that. But certainly I know they're saying, listen, we will deal with your health care priorities and your concerns and where you want to spend more money. But let's do that after we agree to reopening the government for 35 days to sort of late November. And then let's get into the appropriation process. That process is there to spark debate and agreement on funding for the full next year. That's what's best for the American people.
There appears to be like a lack of trust. Democrats don't trust Republicans. Republicans don't trust
Shocking.
Democrats. So where do we go, or is there a short-term fix here?
I don't know. It's just politics, isn't it? I don't know. You know, there are smart people on both sides of the aisle, and I trust the Speaker of the House and the President and you know, our Majority Leader to get us through this. And again, sometimes it's the American public, you know, who don't care about politics, but who care about what's best for them. Again, we talked about, does this interfere with their insurance policy? Does this, their health insurance policy? Does it interfere with their job? What does it interfere with for them to finally say, we've had enough, go get a deal done? I hope it doesn't. I hope it does not get to that point. We shall see.
The economy is still a top issue for most voters. Do you think Republicans are winning that argument, or has that shutdown overshadowed the party's economic message?
I just don't think the shutdown has overshadowed any kind of economic message. I think Republicans are still winning the battle there. We got very important elections in 2026. We'll see where the economy is. The economy seems to be doing good now. We'll see how that fares over the Q4 and then into Q1 as we race towards big elections, even here in Mississippi in 2026 for the U.S. Senate.
I just saw a report the other day that said that the Republican Party feels pretty good going into the midterm, that they don't feel like a blue wave is coming, but their biggest concern is really just the economy. Is that what you're hearing? Yeah,
I do, and that's that's generally what it is. Just about in every election cycle. Every once in a while, there'll be an issue in a presidential race or a Senate race or a governor's race where there's something that the public just has such disdain for that incumbent candidate that has nothing to do with the economy. I certainly don't see that in Mississippi or any of our neighboring states. I think it will look at the economy, and we'll look and see where the president is with his popularity. Which is really high in Mississippi. So it's going to be a fun race, U.S. Senate race to watch in Mississippi next year.
Federal immigration crackdown and troops deployments in some cities. There's been a lot of blowback there, but so far, has this campaign by the White House been in net positive or negative for the GOP?
I mean, I think those are all local questions. If you live in Memphis or you live in Portland or Washington, D.C., I mean, those are three cities that federal troops have been sent in by the president. I think that, folks in those towns, I would assume, of all political parties would say, yeah, we got bad crime issues here. Please give us some help. Whether local politicians, whether those are mayors or members of the city council, will openly agree with the president if he's the opposite party of them, I probably not. But I think those who live in those cities, who just want to get their kids to school, who want to get to work, who want to go to the grocery store, they're glad to see bad people put in jail. And listen, this president, whether you agree with him or not, most of the time he does exactly what he says he's going to do. And he said, I'm going to make law and order a top priority during my administration, and that's exactly what he's done. And I don't see him backing away from it, in any way.
The left says that you shouldn't use the military to police our cities. Those on the right say what you're just saying here. Where is that middle ground here?
It's a fine line, and I understand that. I mean, we don't want to just send federal troops in when they're not needed. But when you have the types of situations that we have in a lot of these towns, and listen, we have a new mayor in Jackson. We've got Capitol Police and the Hinds County Sheriff's Department working with JPD. I mean, things in Jackson seem to be kind of turning around in the right direction. But listen, a few years ago in Jackson, when Jackson was the murder capital of America, possibly the world, Jackson would have been at the top of this list. And as someone who lives in Jackson, is raising a family in Jackson, I wouldn't have shied away from that.
Going back to the midterm elections here, is there anything that the president or the Republican Party will need to do to bolster their chances to win in 2026?
That's a good question. I think that obviously Republicans are in charge of Congress, in charge of the White House. You would hope to see that a deal could go into place where this federal, shutdown doesn't take too much longer, and they can get into a real appropriation cycle, not just a continuing resolution to where they're just, funding the government with the exact same priorities from last year, because we have new issues: infrastructure, healthcare, defense, the border, all these big issues. If Congress can tackle those issues, and the president can continue to tackle the issues around the world, which we may talk about, plus his priorities here at home, Republicans are going to be difficult. They're going to be in a really good position to hold majorities in both chambers.
Let's talk about what happened in the Middle East with the ceasefire and the president able to get the hostages home. How significant is that, and the president able to put pressure on Netanyahu to make that deal?
Well, look, I'm no expert, I'm no foreign policy expert, but when you just look at the situation that we've pretty much witnessed our whole life, there's always turmoil over there, and certainly it was a horrific situation over there with all the people that were murdered in Israel. And then you see these hostages that were held captive for 2 years, and for the president to go in there and his team and his administration to work with both sides, using allies throughout the Middle East, allies of America, and some of them, even in the past, obviously foes of Israel, to work out a deal so we can bring those hostages home and try to bring peace to that whole region. It's a big deal, and I hope, and I'm sure, I want to try to give him credit, those who disagree with President Trump will give him and his administration a lot of credit for that, because they certainly deserve it. And now what will happen in the long term? That's a good guess, and I don't know the answer to that because of that part of the world, but it's certainly a great day to see what's happened so far over there.
As the world waits to see whether President Trump's Israel-Hamas deal will hold, we want to talk about the vicious war in Gaza in Israel, and one man who has played a pivotal role throughout. That's Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Retired veteran Bill Carter is a man with boots on the ground in war and in journalism, and he talked with 12 News' Melanie Christopher about his personal perspective on Netanyahu.
October 1973, the Yom Kippur War, which was Egypt versus Israel. I was sent as an advisor to Israeli forces by the U.S. government to help out with whatever it is that we could provide at the time within reasonable limits. And two of the people that I met and befriended in that time span was a young Saret, which is a special forces officer, actually two of them. One of them was a guy that was introduced to me as Bibi Netanyahu, and his brother, Yanni Netanyahu. So for the duration of the war, which was actually quite short. It was about a week long. I worked with both of them on our involvement and our tactics and our strategies to give them more insight about conventional wars and special forces.
Well, you certainly do have met them and know them, and you have some idea, a good idea, I think, of what is happening here. Discuss Netanyahu's immediate and his long-term response to those Hamas attacks.
Netanyahu came to power behind a couple of real powerhouses in the Israeli military. Shimon Peres being number one, Yitzhak Rabin being number two. They were great military leaders because they came from the military. They were also exceptional politicians. So his template, if you will, comes from general officers in the Israeli Defense Force.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where he learned his military craft, for lack of a better term. So so he was more of a warrior politician than he was a political warrior. He had spent time, as I said earlier, with my experience with him in '73 in dealing with Egypt, which was a constant issue at the time. As a matter of fact, continued to be a constant issue until the Camp David peace accords brokered by Jimmy Carter in, I believe that was '76. And I mean, I'm sorry, '78. And so he didn't inherit that part. He knew that peace could be brought between two countries if those two countries could come to a similar agreement on what their ultimate goals were. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were dealing with Egypt at the time, Anwar Sadat, who was an honorable politician and president of Egypt, knew that he was going to have to go outside the box during the peace accords. Once again, Netanyahu is involved in this, just not in a major way. He was still, I think he was at MIT at the time. But he was hearing it all as it was happening by the US media. And so he learned, based on an honorable president, Anwar Sadat, and an honorable prime minister of Israel, how to negotiate those kinds of things. He believes that there is a peace that can be found, but both sides in the deal have to be honorable and have to be long term. And that's very hard in the Middle East.
Well, let me ask you this. The New York Times and other investigators say Netanyahu may have prolonged or managed the Gaza war partly to protect his political position. We've heard that this really involves politics. Now, how can you tell when a leader is pursuing national security versus political survival?
Well, it's the result at the end of it. Political solutions work. Again, you have to have honorable negotiation for that to work. But getting an honorable solution involves talking with the key players. I think all the key players were pretty much addressing this, except one, that being Iran. Keep in mind that Iran has been sponsoring Hamas in Gaza, which runs Gaza. Iran controls the Houthis in Yemen, and Iran controls Hezbollah in Lebanon. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have Iran at the table,
Mm-hmm.
that theocracy,
They've got to be in the
mix.
mix. Yeah.
It has to be in the mix, and it's not in this particular case. It's not. The U.S. showed a little bit of power, and I think this was part of the plan when they went over, when the United States went over and bombed Iran's nuclear capabilities. This put Iran on notice. The United States is serious about finding a peaceful resolution to this problem, but you're going to have to understand that if you interfere, we will come back at you again. Do you grasp where I'm going there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, yeah.
So at the end of the day, not having Iran in the deal doesn't bring peace to the Middle East. It might bring some peace, but I don't know if it's all peace.
I understand.
We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown from all of us here at 12 News. Make it a great weekend.